In 399 BC, Athens, the most celebrated democracy in human history, executed the wisest man in the city. One of his students watched. He never forgave them. The books he wrote in response became the foundation of Western philosophy. The Plato most people encounter in school feels abstract, bloodless. Strip away the textbook framing, and what you'll find is a controlled explosion. Cold rage channeled into the most sustained intellectual assault on a political system ever written. To understand what Plato wrote, you first have to understand why. Two catastrophes defined him. The first, the trial and execution of Socrates in 399 BC. A democratic jury of 500 ordinary Athenians condemned the man Plato considered the most just person alive. The charges, impiety and corrupting the youth, were politically motivated. The real offense was that Socrates embarrassed powerful men in public by exposing their ignorance. The jury voted to convict. Socrates was forced to drink hemlock in front of his students. Plato watched the most admired democracy on earth destroy its best citizen through a show of hands. The second wound cut deeper. Athens had just lost the Peloponnesian War, 27 years of conflict with Sparta that ended in total defeat. The pivotal disaster came in 415 BC. A charismatic aristocrat named Alcibiades stood before the Athenian assembly and proposed a massive naval expedition to conquer Sicily. The crowd roared approval. Generals who urged caution were shouted down. Athens sent over 200 ships and tens of thousands of soldiers across the Mediterranean. The result? Total annihilation. Fleet destroyed. Army wiped out. Thousands killed. Thousands enslaved in Syracusan quarries. Athens never recovered. For Plato, both catastrophes carried one lesson. Democracy is ruled by applause, not knowledge. That rage needed a form, and the form Plato created was unlike anything before it. He wrote dialogues, not treatises, not lectures, dramatic conversations in which characters argue, joke, provoke, and sometimes fail to reach conclusions. Plato is one of the few ancient writers whose entire body of work survives, 35 dialogues, copied so extensively across centuries that nothing was lost. These are not textbooks. Plato was a poet as much as a philosopher. Every framing scene, every joke, every dramatic silence carries philosophical weight. There are no accidents in a Platonic dialogue. The literary form is itself the teaching. Drama and argument fused into something without precedent in Western culture. The dialogues fall into three developmental periods. The early works are aphoretic, from the Greek aporia, meaning impasse. In dialogues like the Crito, the Apology, and the Ion, Socrates asks fundamental questions. What is courage? What is friendship? What is piety? He never arrives at a definition. This is not failure. The impasse is the point. Plato designed these works to provoke readers into doing their own thinking, to feel the productive discomfort of not knowing. Here we encounter the Socratic method for the first time. Relentless questioning, irony layered on irony, every confident answer peeled apart until the student discovers they don't know what they thought they knew. Plato wasn't content to model inquiry. He had enemies, and he named them. The Gorgias and Protagoras mark the bridge to his mature work. They target the sophists, itinerant teachers of rhetoric who traveled the Mediterranean charging steep fees to teach ambitious men how to seize political power and manipulate juries. Gorgias of Leontini, Protagoras of Abdera. Their core claim was blunt. Politics is about power, not knowledge. Rhetoric is the supreme skill, and the truth is whatever you can persuade people to believe. Plato mounted a direct assault. In these dialogues, Socrates dismantled sophist positions piece by piece, drawing out the fatal difference between merely persuading someone and teaching them something true. But here's what most readers miss. These dialogues are also hilarious. The Protagoras brims with wit, comic timing, and the dramatic irony. Socrates feigns ignorance while surgically exposing contradiction after contradiction. Solemnity is not a prerequisite for seriousness, and Plato knew it. His humor is not philosophical decoration, it is a weapon. The laughter disarms the reader, and the argument lands before they have raised their defenses. The great middle dialogues are the summit. The Republic stands at the center, arguably the greatest single work of Western philosophy. It addresses not just politics, but ethics, epistemology, the theory of knowledge, ontology, the theory of being and reality, and aesthetics. All of these domains converge on one question: moral order. This is the axis around which everything turns, for Plato, as it would later be for Kant. Branching from the Republic are two companion masterpieces. The Symposium explores eros, desire, love, the yearning for beauty and the good. The Phaedo confronts death, the final hours of Socrates, arguing for the soul's immortality while drinking hemlock. Together, these works map the full terrain of human existence, and they rank among the most beautiful literary constructions of antiquity. The Theaetetus marks the bridge out of the Middle Period. Socrates and the young mathematician attempt 3 times to define knowledge. First attempt, knowledge is perception. That fails. Second, knowledge is true belief. That fails too. Third, knowledge is true belief with an account. Also fails. Yet the dialogue is profoundly educative. Socrates delivers no answer. Instead, he accomplishes something rarer, an enlargement of his students' recognized ignorance. Scholars call this propedeutic, meaning preparatory, and protreptic, meaning exhortatory, turning the student toward genuine inquiry. Each failed definition pushes the student upward. The circle of what they don't know expands. That expansion is the precondition for real learning. And then gradually something shifts. In the late dialogues, Socrates diminishes as a character. New voices emerge. In the Laws, Plato's final work, the principal speaker is not Socrates, but an unnamed Athenian stranger. There is reason to believe this figure speaks for Plato himself, articulating positions on governance that go beyond the Socratic framework. The philosopher who began by dramatizing his teacher's voice ends by finding his own. The dialogues do not teach a doctrine. They offer something stranger and more durable, a mimesis, a representation of intellectual activity meant to be emulated. They educate by 2 means. First, presenting an image of a good person, Socrates, acting well, giving readers an inchoate sense of what virtue looks like. Second, goading those readers into asking fundamental questions for themselves. The precondition for learning anything is a mind uncorrupted by the presumption of already knowing. That is why the most influential philosopher in history never once told you what to think. He showed you how to begin. Plato believed Athens destroyed its best citizen and itself through the arrogance of assumed knowledge. His life's work aimed to make that mistake impossible, not by building a better city, but by building a better mind.